Synth Network.
Hello everyone, it's Rob here, Pro Synth Network. It is episode 58, I think. I really should check that. Every time I come on there, I forget which we are 58 guys, aren't we, I think? Let's get them in, because I hate being up here on my own. Let's welcome Cryss and Ben as normal, and this week we are joined by, I call him an industry legend because he's been around a long, long time, and his name has been in my email address book for probably 20 years. He probably doesn't know that, and he probably thinks I'm stalking him. But yeah, we're joined this week by Modal Electronics Vice President of Sales and Industry Slapper, Mr. Jon Bickle. Welcome to everyone. How are we all?
Good evening.
We're great.
Good. Well. So, John, where do we find you? I think that looks a very familiar background.
Yes, some of you may notice it. This is the studio where we make a lot of the product presentations.
Very nice indeed. Very nice. That's down on the south coast somewhere, isn't it? We shan't give away the exact location. Welcome to you. We're going to chat to you and get your opinions on certain things and generally listen to your wonderful tales, which he's been regaling us with before we've come on the show. So hopefully we haven't exhausted that option yet. Let's go over to California to Cryss over there. How is it over there? Has the weather improved since last week?
Last week's weather was great for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, lovely, yeah.
It's like being where you guys are at. So,
yeah.
Everything's fine over here.
Good.
I've been playing around with, let's see, where is it? There it is. Well, actually, both the things back there. I've got
there's two keyboards there now.
Yeah, I've been doing some work on the 2600, and then the little realistic concert me. I decided, well, I got to give that back. It's my in-laws, so I wanted to play around and do a little song with it. So haven't had much time to do recording, but this week I had a little bit of time, so I just started a track with it. Should be fun. Nice.
Look forward to listening to that, and do share that on the page. Mr. Simpson?
Yeah, I sound like a broken record or a
same old
Groundhog Day. Same old here, but like nearly there now. I think there's only 3 songs to do.
When's the first gig?
First gig is it clashes with the show. Actually, the first gig.
You have a decision to make,
and it's a good show as well. So I'm gonna try and join in on location.
Yes, we need an on location live shoot. Sorry, I've just noticed my hair is just like all over the place. I literally just had dinner and came up here. It's been a chaotic week here. But there we go.
And this weekend, my studio looks as though it's falling apart. I don't know if you can tell below the desk. It's all gone all wonky. But it's getting disassembled because the V-Synth XT is being traded in.
For?
Matrix Brute.
Ooh, get you.
A lot of people, I think Sai included, has said don't do it. You know, it's not the right move. But I've got 2 V-Synths, so I just want something different. I've not had a new toy for ages, so I'm going to get that on Sunday.
Indeed, yeah. Disassemble. No disassemble. Sorry, that was... only people of a certain age will get that joke. Look, I've got a new toy. RX-11 came in the post on Tuesday, which is very nice. And I've got an MCS2 coming, the little MIDI control center, or station, I think they call it. Literally just for shits and giggles. So more new toys. Just don't tell the wife. Yeah, so good. Here, it's been a fun week here. So apart from acquiring new gear, I found myself in hospital on Tuesday, which was very exciting. I felt like a piece of modular gear because they put all these things on my chest and plugged me in, and there was lots of beeps and bloops that didn't make any musical sense. So I did very much feel like I was at Synthfest and being demonstrated. But yeah, that was an interesting time. But hey, all is good. So welcome everyone in the chat rooms. So I'm not going to go through names. You know who you all are, should I say? Simon's there, Martin Taylor, Wagyu, James Dyson, of course, programming lots of great sounds for modal stuff at the moment, and others. Kent Spong's there. Had a lovely chat with Kent earlier this week. Thanks for that. Mark Acker, Jupiter Boy, Richard Gruel. Yeah. That's you are. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your patronage as always. And of course, if you do want to join us during the week when we're not on air, then of course you can find us on places like Twitter. We're also on Instagram, and of course the main place, which is the Facebook page. And of course you can catch up with all our shows live and otherwise on the YouTube channel Synth Network, and of course you'll see that all of those handles are identical, so you can't really go wrong at all. And if you want to contact us privately as for social media, then there's the email address info@prosynthnetwork.com. And finally, because we are always on the scrounge, if you do want to keep us on air and you wish to donate to the cause, many people do, and we are super grateful for it, then the link is just down there. There's also a clickable link in the description below the video, so it's cutley/PSN-donate. And all donations are greatly received and keep us going for a little while longer. So let's.
There may have been a missed opportunity. Wagyu asked, "Did you remember to take a PCM recorder with you when you went to the hospital?"
Oh, do you know I didn't? Unfortunately, this is the crazy thing, right? So it was all a bit, all over the place, and we had a rapid response paramedic turn up, 2 of them, and they said, "Look, sorry, mate, you're going to have to go into hospital, and you better pack an overnight bag because they might want to keep you." So I'm like held prisoner on the sofa downstairs. I'm not allowed to move anywhere. So the wife comes up here and she grabs everything, and I yell up to her, "Grab my laptop just in case." So I get everything there, and I've got my phone with me, and then I put the phone down on the side, and then they wheel me out, and I left all my communications devices here at home, which was actually kind of liberating in a nice way. But I didn't have anything to do any recording, so. But yeah, it wouldn't have been. Well, it would have sounded like a modular jam.
It's not the first thing on your mind, is it? I suppose when you.
No, I suppose not. But
better take a recorder with me so I can get some sound.
It would have been great to catch, because I've never been in an ambulance before ever. I'm 51 years old this year. I've never been in an ambulance until this Tuesday, and we had sirens and everything. We were proper doing all that, and that's when my ticker decided to step back into normal rhythm, thankfully. And
the excitement of all that.
It was, yeah. It was like, he was saying, actually, the ambulance driver, I'll just get this out, he had somebody with a similar condition a short while ago, and they went over a pothole, and the jolt of the pothole clicked his heart back into rhythm, which I thought was rather amusing, given that we have terrible potholes here in the UK. But so there is a good thing for those. Anyway, let's move on with the show, and we've got a few news topics. We've had 2 late ones. One is going to be our key discussion topic, because we've got Jon on the show, and I really thought he would provide some valuable insight to this discussion. And we've also had a new release literally in the last sort of hour or so, so we're going to throw those in there. But we'll start off, we'll just go through some of these little things. These actually were topics we were going to talk about last week with Dave, but God, he goes on. So we just kind of ran out of time. But the first one was this one. So some of these might not be specifically new, but they're kind of new to us. The first one is Generates, the marquee chaotic polysynth from Newfangled Audio, has just been updated and is currently $99. I must admit, I tried the free version of this, which I can't remember what its name was. Pendulum? Sorry, Pendulate. That's it. And I kind of liked it, but I don't know. I just didn't click with me. But Cryss, what's changed with this? Has there been anything new added to this? Is this just
Yeah, it was a really interesting update. They added 3 new oscillators and then also a lot of modulation options. So one of my complaints, there was a couple basic things you couldn't do with it before. It's got a really interesting layout and things you can do with it. The chaotic oscillator is really interesting idea. And if you guys are looking for something that's unusual, that's new, that's not the same old thing, this is one of those synths that I would recommend. So in addition to the oscillator type, some things like being able to modulate the pitch of the oscillator now, which was not a possibility before. But again, there's a lot of really great like atmospheric. It's got a little bit of a Buchla vibe to it. It uses a low pass gate and has again with just the layout of it, you'll kind of see that it's good for experimentation. But it's one that I got when it came out, and it's done by Dan Gillespie, who was a former Eventide engineer.
Yeah,
has done a lot of great stuff. So I actually picked up also because they're Newfangled Audio's other softwares on sale as well. So I picked up. I had Saturate, but then I was able to get the full. I think it's called Elevate, the mastering bundle, and I haven't had time to put it into use. But I can say with Saturate is a really great saturator.
Got some nice names behind the presets on this thing. People like Matt Lang, Chris Carter, Laurie Spiegel. So clearly has a nice little following there. I'd say I can't comment because I've not played with it, and I'd say I didn't gel with the other one as much as I'd like to. Ben, how about you? Did you get a chance to have a look at this, or is this not your thing?
Only as much as like the videos and stuff. I haven't actually downloaded it and that, but it's a really interesting synth. It's like Cryss said, they're really trying to do something different, and I reckon it would really be a great synth to program in a kind of evolving way, with all the connections that you've got and the modulations. It does seem really good. I love the way that all the visualizations work. Like Cryss mentioned that chaotic oscillator before. The way that is visualized behind the controls, it's amazing, really. Just that it can do that. That alone is great. But I found that some of the sounds were like Cryss mentioned, Buchla-esque. It is. I find the Buchla stuff sometimes a bit harsh, and it's got a very harsh, aggressive sound to it. That, like, naturally, I suppose you could tone that down, but like it does seem to be a harder sounding synth. So hard digital sounding thing, that excellent visualization, loads of modulation options. Yeah, it seems good. I don't think it's for me, but I like I say, I didn't actually download it and play it. But from what I can see, it might not be for me. But some people will love that.
Yeah.
The possibilities with it are fantastic.
Now, Jon, you keep telling me that you're not a gearhead, that you're not really, you're not like us. But do you have an opinion on this? Are you does this kind of thing appeal to you in any shape or form?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I've just went to look at the YouTube sorry, there sort of thing, and it was nice. I agree with the other comments. It sounded very very digital, quite robust, metallic. But there again, as you say, you need a vast palette when you're writing music. So I think in certain circumstances it would be very, very good.
Indeed.
But no, I don't have a big opinion. But
no,
I thought it was an interesting synth.
Yeah, and that's is different, and it's not like anything else really that's kind of out there with this chaos thing and the pendulum stuff. And yeah, it's nice to see something new.
It wouldn't be for, like Ben was saying, like I don't think this is something you'd turn to if you were doing like 80s synth pop or anything. But if you're doing kind of dark ambient type stuff, it's great. And it actually, just to add to it, like there are some presets in there that get like pretty crazy and again very chaotic, but it can get some pretty warm, fat sounds too out of it. I've programmed quite a few presets for it, and given what it is and its uniqueness, you can still get some kind of classic sounds out of it as well. And the new oscillator types are definitely a nod in that direction, about more, this is a little bit more like an old school saw wave type sound, but again, they're coming up with it with crazy mathematical formulas to do it. But it's a fun synthesizer. Again, if you like what it does, and if you're into more like ambient or cinematic stuff, it's a great synth.
Yeah, absolutely. And $99 at the moment. Available from newfangledaudio.com. You can also buy it at Eventide, and there is a demo version, which I guess if I'm doing my job properly, I should have downloaded. And you, Ben, because as Mickey was saying in the chat room, every week Ben says, I haven't actually downloaded it, which is, fair enough. We're busy people. Right, so that is Generate. Now this one, I saw this the other week, and I kind of like what this does, and I'm going to check this out. This is Baby Audio and their Smooth Operator plugin, which is an intelligent signal balancer, and it's currently 44% off at $39, which is a pretty reasonable price, I would say. What does it do? Well, it's kind of like this really simple to use kind of EQ, I guess. Combines equalization, spectral compression, and resonance suppression into a singular creative experience that's intuitive and instant. Use it to perfect your tonal balance and add a touch of hi-fi. So that's kind of it in action there. I don't know if you can see that there. It looks very much like the EQs that I use in Reason, where you just have all these points, but this is actually kind of doing a lot of it for you and monitoring your audio and kind of making adjustments as you go along. I was just trying to see if there was a video there, but there isn't, and I'll have to find that. Because I don't want to go into these reviews because they'll all get into all sorts of stuff. But an interesting thing, we've talked about these kind of tools that make things easy for you and take the job, that the difficult learning job of how these things work away from you. But a little bit of intelligence does go a long way. What do you think, Ben? You're muted.
I was just saying, ironically, unfortunately, I haven't got any intelligence, so I can't comment. And my mic was muted. It's this artificial intelligence creeping into music technology, isn't it? And helping us achieve the things that we want to achieve. Was this the one that works on the spectral level, or am I thinking of something else?
Yeah. Spectral detection algorithm.
Yeah, but it kind of like anybody who's used like anything like RX8 or spectral layers, you can view like a waveform spectrally, and then when you start to remove things, you can like focus on sounds between sounds. And like you can maybe like a bit like you see on the Fairlight, how you can tilt a waveform and see the depth in it.
Yes.
Then it kind of does that, and what this seemed to be doing was like affecting the spectral range of it. It was dead weird. There was like all these frequencies were coming out that like shouldn't really be able to be plucked from it.
Yeah,
it was really unique and original. So I think there's loads of potential in that technology going forward. Again, like in my superb preparedness, I haven't actually tried it myself, but it is very interesting and a great like start for a new type of effects processing.
Yeah, there seems to be more and more of this kind of artificial intelligence that kind of just makes the whole task of, because learning how to EQ stuff correctly, is a fairly difficult thing to do. You can't just sort of jump in and do it. And so having something that will make this easier, and so it does this. It says here, an intelligent algorithm that automatically detects and resolves fatigued frequencies. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. John, are you into? What do you think of this kind of this artificial intelligence that's creeping into software and so on? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
I think it's an interesting thing. When I listened to the audio examples, it kind of reminded me of going back a long time ago, the Oral Exciter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember those? So you suddenly had these frequencies coming up. I'm happy with it, though it's not for everybody. But as you say, learning to EQ, and don't ever put me in front of a desk or anything like that, because I'll just have smiley face and that's it. On everything. And
isn't that how? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll probably have reverb on bass drum and everything else. So just keep me away from anything like that. But I thought the audio examples were interesting. But
yeah, definitely. It does do something really quite nice to it. Cryss, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so to make a distinction, because there are AI software, like we covered Sonible's Smart EQ, which also just had an update that now does a few more things that are similar to this. But before, like where it would use this artificial intelligence to create a static EQ for a mix, this is a little bit different, because that would I think would be covering what we've been talking about so far. Is like helping out people to get to the place they want to be in EQ a lot faster, or if it's for somebody that just doesn't know the ins and outs of EQ yet. This, however, goes beyond that, in that with the AI in this, it's less about like EQ and more about taming harsh resonances. And especially with something like vocals, where maybe your keyboards or your guitar or something is going to stay pretty static over the course of a song as far as how you can EQ it. With something like vocals, you need to have something that's a little bit more flexible. And so rather than going in and editing each section, like you might have a singer that hits that high note and it gets really harsh or really sharp, and then you have to go in and automate EQ to just grab that little thing here. This will do it for you, so it's going to save you time. But also the thing is that again, comparing to things that we can do if we just learn the skills, here's again a product that can do things that we cannot do no matter what. And this will make EQ corrections and bring those resonances out of your music that are harsh or unpleasant at a rate of 44,000 times a second or whatever it was. It's pretty incredible, and this is pretty comparable. Like I think what people would naturally think of would be Soothe 2 and Gullfoss, which are a little bit different. This is probably a little bit closer to Soothe, but the same thing where it's doing these micro EQs, and it's getting it to a very taking out those harsh resonances in a way that is continuous through the course of a song. I mean, every second it's making these micro adjustments, and that's something that a human cannot do and cannot take care of. We can't control, however many bands. This is a little bit simpler than, say, what Gullfoss or Soothe is covering, but we just cannot do that. So I think it's a great plugin, and plugins like these for making music sound good, especially when we're working, especially for the home musician that's working in a studio that might not be the greatest sound in the room. So when you do some acoustic instruments and things, you're going to run into those problems like, oh, it's really boomy here, or it's got that really harsh resonance up here. And software like this can really help bring that in order, and then you can do your wide EQ to like kind of bring it into balance with your other tracks. I'm sure there's definitely a place in everyone's toolkit for something like this, whether you use it
all the time, or just to get you in a place quickly, that, you know, like you said, to allow you to then go in at a more subtle level. Sasquatch in the chat room says, won't this lead to more of a standardized sound? And I guess if everybody used it in the same way, it probably would, but hopefully they won't. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like things that make things easy, especially if I want to get a track down or get an idea down, because I think I've said before, when I put things together, I like to kind of like EQ and master all at the same time, just to get the right sound. I know that's really bad habits, but if I can, you know, get something sounding the way I want it quickly.
If you've got a sound in your head,
Yeah.
and it takes you a while to achieve that, and then it's a break in your creative flow, isn't
That's
it?
it. You lose interest, don't you?
Anything that can get you there quicker is great for that creative
Yeah.
process. It just keeps. So
And it's still dependent on the source material. So what you put into it is going to, you know, affect how it's used. And as far as, you know, like with the comment, like, you know, is it going to make everybody sound the same? Like, I think this would be an area that would be pretty low on the list for synthesis. I mean, you know, we're talking about a number of genres for synthesis that usually rely on sequencers and drum machines. I mean, that's going to be the thing that makes everybody sound the same.
Yeah.
That, you know, super quantized sound. Like this, I don't think is going to make much of a difference.
No. Interesting thing. It's Baby Audio, so the website is babyord.io. Smooth Operator is the name, and it's currently on offer with 44% off. Introductory sale at $39, normally $69. Go fill your boots with that one. I want to talk about this next one because Jon, along with myself, but obviously Jon's done way more important stuff, back in the day worked with Akai, and so I'm always tuned into anything that Akai do, or Akai as they say in America. Jon, what did you always call it? Was it Akai or Akai?
Akai.
Yeah, it's always that. I don't know why the emphasis was always on the K. Yeah, Cryss, what do you call it?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask.
No, you're not. You're an American.
I've never had a hardware sampler, so it'd be one of those things that I have probably not ever brought up in conversation.
So anyway, it was just one of those
things. I've heard it both ways.
Yeah. It does tend to be that those on the other side of the Atlantic call it Akai, whereas over here it's just Akai, and I guess the proper pronunciation is however the Japanese pronounce it. However, Akai are no longer owned by the Japanese. They're owned by In Music, I think, is the name of the umbrella company now. Jack O'Donnell's business, that's Alesis and Newmark and Ion and a whole bunch of others sitting in there.
Yeah. DJ.
Yes.
Newmark,
yes. Yeah, they're a real big kind of umbrella company.
18 brands.
Yeah, it's a monster now, isn't it? But this is the new thing, for the new old thing, shall we say. So the MPC-1 has now had a special retro edition makeover. So it's gone back to the old Akai beige with the red logo in the top right-hand corner. Is that... Because I've lost touch with Akai stuff over the years. That looks, I mean, that's the same Akai logo as I have on my old original Akai professional gear. Yeah. I thought they'd gone to a new kind of design, but I see that logo, and I still kind of get a little bit of excitement because I always wanted an Akai sampler back in the day, and to eventually get one was just a real dream. And I have to say, I looked at this and thought, oh, that's nice. And then I realised that it's something I probably would never use, and I'm just falling for it because of the looks. But let's go to Jon. Jon, obviously you were part of that group. What was that? 20 years ago now?
No, I only left 3 years ago.
Oh, you only left 3 years ago. Blimey!
Yeah,
but you were there.
12.
You were there.
I did 12 years. I did.
Because
the music group. So yeah. I was originally the sales manager for the professional brands.
Yeah.
And then I moved to international sales for a few of the brands. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I definitely remember your name in email chains and stuff that were bouncing around when I was doing stuff with Steve Howell on Fusion and things like that. Yeah. So, what's your take on the MPC-1 Special Retro Edition?
I think this is a couple of things. One could be test the water, to see what the consumer reaction is. Do they want to go back away from the current black MPCs? It could be just a pure charge an extra, 5% more for a limited edition and take the money. That's also not a bad strategy. But I think I actually sent a message to someone in music and said, just to let you know, I prefer that look.
Yeah.
But I'm older. So, I was been doing this kind of like 35, 37 years. So I was there when the original samplers came down. So I have a bit of nostalgia for that look and that kind of whole feel. But overall, I thought it looked good.
Yeah, it is a pretty thing, and I do like the colour scheme very much. Like you say, I think for us old people, I still like my little beige box of stuff down there, and it just has an appeal. However, that said, the MPC One and the MPC Live are really making some waves. Lots of people enjoying it. I think they dropped the ball, didn't they, for a period, and Native Instruments kind of took over this particular market with Machina, and they had a massive impact. But they've clawed it back somewhat, and these machines, I hear nothing but good stuff about them. So to then now see them in their kind of original livery is kind of nice. And I hope it's not a cynical marketing ploy, but then what most marketing ploys are, quite cynical, I suppose. But yeah, nice little machine. Nice, lots of. Well, I mean, we know what the MPC One can do in terms of its connectivity and features. Really, all that's changed here is simply the color scheme. And we will come on to this topic of samplers in a little while, because there was a discussion that we wanted to kind of raise in here. But we'll come to that later. Ben, I know you're not an MPC guy, but you're of our age.
I am an Akai guy, though, and this is... It's lovely to see it.
Yeah, it is.
It looks great. It looks really, really good. I just wish that it had, like, I don't know, like a little bit more retro about it. Like a screen mode where you could go, like, all blue or something, like the the old S range.
Blue on white or the white on blue.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Like just a daft thing, like you could turn it off if you didn't like it, but I think that would be quite cool. And maybe some, I don't know if it's got any of the original sound banks from the original MPCs or anything. That would have been a good touch as well. But I'd be interested in this now, just simply because we changed the colour of it.
Yeah.
that's how Akai stuff should look. It shouldn't be all black and shiny. It's not right. It should look like that.
Well, a round of applause for the marketing people at Akai, because they've done the job with you.
Yeah,
they've sold you on it.
Yeah.
I was just looking through the specs here in terms of sample library as well. It does come with about 2 gig of exclusive sound content, but it looks like it's pretty much sort of current sample providers. And that was one of the great things about the MPCs. I mean, obviously a lot of people were using them to do their own beats and sounds and lifting them off various records, but there was a really the big kind of pool of stuff that was out there that was very usable. Cryss, again, I'm assuming you're not an MPC guy given your previous comments, but is it nice to see something in retro livery, or is it just a little piece of nostalgia and a cheap marketing stunt?
I think it's great. To give some more options, and especially for people who like the vintage look. I would be curious to see who buys it, because obviously, people that grew up with the originals, this would have that nostalgia factor to it. I'm wondering how much younger generations would get into it, millennials and Gen Z. If nothing for the fact that the 80s are very hip and popular now, although it's a kind of a certain version of the 80s, as I've noticed. It's like a very narrow, what did the 80s look like? But I think that may be popular too. Just as a side though, like if you're a gigging musician, this has got to be a lot better than an all black one. Because you're going to be able to see where stuff is, the knobs and everything like that, a little bit easier. But I think it has a great look, and I would say if there was any of them that I would be tempted to get, I would be with Ben and like, hey, you've packaged it up in a very retro, nostalgic looking thing. Even though I don't have a history with it, I would be a lot more likely to get something like this than some big black box to sit on my desk.
Yeah. For sure.
I could actually, if I'd had a bit more time, I may be able to get you a fuller answer, because one of the core management marketing guys has just joined Modal a couple of weeks ago. So yes, Ross Davies was part of that team that I'm sure would have had a hand somewhere along the line, knowing about how that did. So he joined Modal, I think, about 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
so,
right.
But I didn't know this was happening.
No,
So.
sure.
Another thing that it makes you realise as well, just looking at it, it is very reminiscent of those early machines. But it makes you realise how much things have come on since then. Yeah. Because some of the connections on there, and I noticed that it's got that splice integration. If those early MPCs had been able to just like magically get sounds from the ether, it'd be like, wow, what's going on here? You wouldn't have believed it, but all this is just built in now. Download samples on the fly as you need them, like direct to the machine, and that splice library is pretty comprehensive. There's some good stuff in there.
And they've also backed it up with lots and lots of sound sets. So if you want to go in one genre, so I think it's a really very, very strong system. I really do.
It has really come back with, excuse the pun, with force. Because obviously the other one is called the Force.
Well, hey, let's not jump over what you said before. You said it's really making waves.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, very good. Because what this reminded me of was, and I don't know if it's still a thing, but back in the day there was a big thing around customizing your MPC. There were companies that would do custom jobs. And some would, go all out with, proper spray paints. Others would be, transfers and decals that you could put on, and just, there was a big thing around customizing your MPC to make it your own. Every hip hop producer had their own custom paint job on there, and I just wondered if that was something that still goes on. I don't know, because I'm not really in the MPC world.
What's that product? It's the sampler and the cycles. Those little groove boxes. Yeah, they came with a whole bunch of stickers, and every time you see one come up used, it's got somebody else's stuff all over it. Yeah,
it's one of those things that, so if you customize it, it kind of makes it unique, and then that's not always appealing if you want to move it on to somebody else. But Simon just said in the chat room, Bruce Forat in LA does huge custom jobs on many famous MPCs, of course, and Lin equipment as well, because he owns the license for all of that stuff. Not cheap, from what I heard, but looks very nice. Anyway, that's the Akai MPC-1 Retro Edition. I couldn't see a price because it just has Find a Dealer on there, so I don't know if it's retailing for the same price as the last one, which I think, am I right? It's about £800 or £900, or maybe a little bit more. It's less than that now. Oh, right, okay. That's not bad. So yeah, I mean, that's the MPC-1. I don't know whether we'll see any of the others go over that way. I suppose it all depends, as John says, on whether this is successful or not. Anyway, MPC-1 Retro Edition, akaipro.com for more information about that, and it is available now, I believe. We'll come back to some news topics a little bit later on, but I'm conscious that we've got John here, and we want to get as much out of the man himself as possible. So I'm just going to throw some questions at you, John. You've been in the business now for a long while, should we say? I'll be respectful. But when you sent me a list of the names of the companies you worked for, it'd probably be easy if I asked you who you hadn't done time with. I mean, Studer, Korg, obviously Modal, the In Music brands. Where did it all start? Well, I know where it all started, but tell people where it all started for you back in the day.
Back in the day, I guess I came out of college doing my A levels, which is the exams you take about 18, but I really wanted to do music, and there was a little mums and dads store which took me on, and then I used to run to the main sort of high-tech store, and they booked me up for doing demonstrations of the latest wear, and I'd have to run back. This is stupid. But because the store was buying and was part of a chain, I got to know the manufacturers. Right. So I was then buying for a group, so they were feeding me information and stuff. So I got to know these guys, and eventually, after about 6-7 years, I went to work for Sennheiser, the distributor.
Okay.
But then after that, I went to Harman International, where that was JBL, Alan Heath, Steinberg, AKG, DBX. There's a whole series of brands, and I did that. And basically, by stabbing a lot of people in the back, I became sales manager. And then after that, they shut the UK operation down completely and went to distributors. And then basically, I wrote to Korg and said, "Get a job," you know. And I think at the time I was just very, very lucky, and they were looking for someone to run the sales team. There were like 8 field sales people. So I did that for a number of years, and that obviously was Vox amplification, Mapex drums, Jupiter brass and woodwind, and obviously Korg, and Takamine guitars.
Oh yes.
So after that, I had a couple of kids, and I wasn't seeing them because it was 120 miles from my house to my work, and it was just getting too much. So In Music came calling saying, "Come and do this," and it's a lot closer. And I thought, yeah, why not? So, and then of course they went on the acquisition trail and started buying loads of things. There was only Akai, Alesis, and Newmark when I got. There was only 3 brands. So again, it was I was just very, very, very fortunate that they wanted an acquisition. So there's all these other brands flying in. It was M Audio, and it was just a very interesting time. So yeah, I've worked. But then after that 12 years, I basically took a year off and said, "That's it. I'm retiring. I've done my corporate bit for 37 years, and it would have to take something very special for me to be dragged back into the industry." But you know, as you know, you had Philip Taysom on the other day. He's only a couple of miles away from me, and we just had a chat, and it seemed that I could probably help the company with the international distribution, because Modal had gone from these very, very high-end things, which only a few people would stock, so you could really manage it. And then suddenly you were into products which are like $150 or $300, and then there was this whole roadmap coming up of other products coming along the way. And I just thought, without a distribution network around the world, they won't know about it. No one will know. So I said, okay, well, look, I'll try and build a network. And now we have something like, I think, 40 distributors plus around the world, from Taiwan, Australia, Korea, China, to South America, and Scandinavia. So Modal products are now visible in stores and online pretty much in every country around the world now.
So what is your day-to-day kind of, what's a day in the life of Jon Bickle like at Modal Electronics these days?
Well, because I'm the sort of the sole sales guy, I'm dealing with time zones which are that way and that way.
Yeah.
So that's where these come from, you know. I'm actually only 23 years old, but yeah. So I'm dealing with people's orders and trying to cajole them into ordering more, and also help with our new marketing team, which is a great bunch of guys. I have to say, you know, I mentioned all those brands. There is something very special about the company. Now, you probably think I'm just doing a sales pitch here. I'm genuinely telling you, these guys that you see, these products, they could be my children. They're that young.
Yeah.
And they are an astonishing bunch of people, I have to say. They are completely astonishing, completely dedicated, and really creative. And unlike the corporate structure that I had before, where you had to worry about what you said, if not, someone's going to stab you in the back like I used to do. These guys are real fun to be with, and they're very passionate. And I'm really standing. The growth that we've had enormous growth, is really down to them.
Yeah.
Because they are making some astonishing products, and it makes my job very much easier. People go, "Oh, that's cool. I love some of those," and honestly, it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, because we had Philip on the show a few weeks ago, and he really did come across as or present Modal as this non-corporate corporation kind of thing. It is kind of like a family business where everyone gets on, and it is refreshing to see in this day and age of very cynical commercial stuff that there's a company out there that listens, that develops, that is agile in what it does and clever in what it does. I mean, we were talking about the Sculpt SE just the other day, and you made this very clear point that you cannot buy a 4-voice polyphonic MPE capable synth for that price anywhere. I mean, it's just a ridiculous price, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course you could polychain 4 of them up.
Yeah.
So that's going to give you 128 oscillators and 16 voices.
Yeah.
For $800. It's that sort of stuff. You go, well, actually, my job's pretty simple.
Yeah.
When you put it like that, it's not like I've got some horrible thing that doesn't work, doesn't look good, doesn't sound good. So yeah, it's been we have other new products coming out through this year, which is going to be really exciting. And the company's evolving, bringing in new people all the time. So it's an exciting time, to be honest.
Yeah, because I guess we can't draw you on any of that new stuff yet, can we? Yeah, no. Actually, I shan't get you in trouble because
it's one of them is just behind that camera, but
really,
I could show you, but I'd have to kill you first.
Yeah, okay.
I can see it in the reflection of the screen.
Oh yeah, look at the reflection in the screen. No.
You said your job is easy, but I think, given our last conversation about custom colors, that maybe you guys have shot yourself in the foot, because we're not going to be getting a Modal Cobalt in special edition orange now, are we?
No.
Or are we?
Cobalt.
Let's talk about this, because as you say, Modal has shifted from being this really kind of high-end premium, very kind of exclusive boutique. Yeah, that's that stuff. And now you're not only did you kind of go right down the other side with the original Craft synth and the original drum that you clipped together. Yeah, it was. I mean, that was just like, wow. I mean, that's just so. It was polar opposites. But now in the middle ground. And we've said this on the show before, and again, I said it to Phil, we're not blowing smoke up the proverbial, but things like the Sculpt and the Craft Synth 2 are cracking little pieces of gear, but the Cobalt and the Argon and the whole product line, that you've got the 3 versions, they are priced supremely competitively. No. And the quality is outstanding. Not just the sounds, but the build quality, the FATAR key, everything at this amazing price point. I mean, you said it's easy to sell this stuff when it's that good. I mean, how is that whole... I asked Phil this. Do you have a universal term for that range of synths, the Argons and the Cobalts? I mean, or is it... I mean...
Yeah, but I think... Well, one thing that I wanted to stress was that because the guys in the development team are very young, they have a couple of things which are always in the forefront, which is what would they buy themselves? And that comes across every time we have some sort of meeting. They're not saying, oh, we could sell more for that. It's like, well, wouldn't you want to do that? You talked about the FATAR keyboards and having aftertouch. I don't mind saying this. I'm staggered that some of my erstwhile colleagues and stuff don't consider to have proper keyboards with aftertouch, because for me that makes the difference between being actually an instrument.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
The interaction between playing and it's a whole thing. For me, if you take that away, it's like a compressor just on. Yeah. And I I'm really glad that we didn't, go down the route of like we're saving a few pounds here, but to make sure that and to have metal chassis as well, because if you want to take this stuff on the road, it's got to last.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So these are the kind of tick boxes, and I said that it had to be something special. When you see that the company ethos is like, no, we're not going to cheap out here. No, we're not going to cheap out there. That's what made the decision to join much easier.
Yeah, because that's the thing, and we've said it on the show numerous times that there are other people in the market, other big players that you have been employed by in the past, who are making 37-note keyboards for more and selling them for more money than the Cobalt and the Argon, with cheap plastic cases and no aftertouch on the keyboards, and it's shocking that you guys are just wiping the floor with them in terms of that kind of specification.
But they're probably making money.
Fair point.
But to be perfectly honest, right here, right now, when we come from these fantastic, 002, 008 products, and then gone down some of that, there's probably a little bit of an identity crisis for people who are we. Cobalt and Argon say, look, these the stuff we're going to make, and don't think for a second we have abandoned anything high end. If you take one thing away, it's like we will come back with some stellar products, and there'll be ranges which are logical and giving you, but always trying to give you the best bang for the buck that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about the Cobalt and the Argon is that when you look at them, they're a modal synth, because they're stylish, they're well built, there is a design, what's the word? There's a genetic, DNA. There's a design DNA between that and the 002s and the 008s. And similarly with the Crafts and the Sculpts of this world. But it's a modal synth. And I think just by looking at it, that it's going to, so I've got my Cobalt here. It weighs, it feels nice. The metal's cold to touch. The keyboard is lovely to play. It's going to have that kind of quality.
The other thing to probably mention is, like, you're right about that, taking the stuff from the 002 and 008. Something that not everybody will realise, the people who are involved with that are still at the company.
Right.
It's not like they all disappeared and we got new guys in every 3 months and the faceless of that. It's really the vast majority are the same guys that are involved in those projects. So they take that ethos from when they were helping build and design those products through to the other products.
Yeah.
So as I said, it just comes a point where you go, no, we're not going to cheap out. And but there is a serious point there, which is we are trying to establish ourselves worldwide. And if you're trying to do that, you have to stop people in their tracks and say, where are you guys coming from? And one thing is to make good product, but also make it incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a means to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, have you got any questions you'd like to throw John's way?
I was wondering, we often use like the car analogy when we're on about synths on here for some reason. But like when Modal first came on the scene, it was like a high-end, product. And I was wondering if the decision to go more to the lower end, price-wise, not quality, of course, with things like the craft synth and that, affected that higher-end image. Like the reason I mentioned the cars would be like if, say, Aston Martin with the Argon and stuff would be kind of a normal family car, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And the craft synth and that is probably like a push bike, and not in performance, but in comparison. I wondered if it affected the kind of brand a little bit, or
I don't think so. I think there was a reality that these 00 series are fantastic instruments, but there's only so far you can go, and there's only so many people who want to buy them. And I think what the company wanted to do was start with a whole new engine which they could take forward to products like Cobalt and Argon, and forward. So that's where the company made a decision and said, okay, let's develop something new that will be the ecosystem for everything else that comes after it. I was only at the back end of the 00 series, but I've never come across someone saying, what the hell are you doing making products which are a couple of £100? No one said that. They judged it on the quality of the sound that they made and said, yeah, that's good value or not. So
I think that's apparent through the full range, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you want a marketing tagline, John, Kent Spong has just given you an absolute brilliant one. I'm not familiar with modal stuff, but that's probably because it doesn't break, I guess. There you go. There you go. Put that on the bottom of your next advert.
Thanks, Kent. The money's in the post. All right.
It's great because it doesn't break. Brilliant. Chris, you got anything for?
I think it's a kind of an interesting thing with these newer lines of synthesizers, and that it does probably create a brand awareness so that even the 002 and your other really high end synths are known more because of the Argon and the Cobalt and your other devices, which is interesting. I have a question for you, and since you're in the industry, I thought this would be something interesting to get your take on. We've noticed, as we've been doing this show for the last year, there's been a lot of, we had like a little bit of a dip for a while last year, it seems like, as far as new synthesizers coming out. And then there's been some times where we've just had tons of things, but we're hearing about the availability of chips and different problems in the industry right now because of, I'm assuming it's all because of COVID, but I know there was a factory fire for a chip maker, I believe. How does this time period affect you guys as synth makers, distributors, with the resources and everything that's happening because of COVID?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Again, my answer would be, because we're small, we can move much quicker than some other people. We can make decisions very much quicker, and they've got some people, as soon as we realized this was a problem, there was a couple of things we were trying to secure the chips from various sources. I think there's also been some redesigns, which gives us some options. But the most important thing was that we were quick to react. I'm not going to say we're not going to be affected, but so far, we are we're managing the process as best we can.
Cool.
But it's a very real issue, as you know. So.
Do you guys find problems in that? There's some pretty large companies out there, like Roland and Korg, some, Behringer even that are just huge. Do you find you guys yourselves like losing out because of the amount of product you're buying?
I think there'll be other people there that got deeper pockets than us, that have been established for 40, 50 years, or have got hundreds of millions of that. They probably can afford to be a bit more bullish. But as I said, right here, right now, I think we took some really good steps to try and limit any impact on us. I'm not saying we're going to get away with it scot-free. I'm not saying that at all. But yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job as far as I can see. I'm not close to that, by the way, so I'm not dealing with the factories. I'm just trying to. But that's what I hear. That yes, it's a real situation, and we're doing the best we can.
What is good news to hear, both you and Philip have talked about more synthesizers coming in the near future. So we're very excited about that, and pass on to your engineers as well. Something that, Robbie was, I think was talking about earlier too. Like we just blast on synth makers that don't include some of the basic things. And as I'm out reading forums and looking at information, it's amazing how many of the same complaints people have about a huge array of synthesizers. It doesn't have aftertouch. It's completely plastic. They don't make a rack version of it, or whatever format, a 61 key format version of it. They don't make an app for an editor app for it, and that's something that you guys have just nailed on every account.
Yeah.
And,
I would like to point out though that there are companies like Behringer and stuff who own the factories, so it's very difficult to try and compete with people who own the factories, because they can bypass certain costs. So there's always going to be price pressure, because they're going to go, this product is this and your product's that, and there's a disconnect there, and so there's always going to be pressure of like, where can we make something a cost saving? And key beds are incredibly expensive, chassis are incredibly expensive, so it's a mindset of shall we say, we got 10 things we could shave off to get to a reasonable price, and some companies have made a decision to go some way. It's not the decision that Modal would take, but I still respect the pressure that they are under. But it's not for us. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, my Cobalt, which I have you see behind me, the 61 key version.
So
I love. I mean, that's my favorite key bed, and because of the slim form factor, that's become my main controller for soft synthesizers, in addition to its own synthesizer in there, just because of that quality.
Yeah.
Tell us what was the mindset, because obviously we didn't know this when we had Phil on. What was the mindset behind the rebrand of the Sculpt synth?
I think the things that we noticed, that obviously when we first made the original Sculpt, there were some things that we got feedback from people. Not everyone liked this kind of diagonal look, so that some people said, well, you did a white version. I think there was original like a white and black key version, and it's easier to read. So there was that. Also, I think the presets that came with the machine didn't show the actual engine off, which is a very, very clever engine and a very big engine, off to its fullest. So we had a chance to redress some of those issues. So we did it, and also then we could negotiate with the factory and say, look, here's an orders for lots of them. Let's hit a 169, 199 US, 199 euro price point, and the hope was that we could introduce Modal to a lot more people, and then they can start the journey with us going upwards. So that was the thought process on it. The other thing is, frankly, we thought if people had a chance to hear it, they would hopefully fall in love, and we could take them on another journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the new presets sound completely different to the original, but they are compatible. So.
Yes, and that's the other great thing, because when I saw this, my heart sank a little, because I thought, I'm going to have to buy another one, because I like the original so much. But you don't. It's internally, it's exactly the same. It's a facelift, isn't it? And also a sound lift, with the new presets.
Yeah, it is. But as you say, but it's also at a much lower cost.
Yes.
It's a fantastic synth for the money for anyone wanting to get, because actually I think the Modal app for this synth, I've learned an awful lot about synthesis by actually playing with this.
Yeah.
That's how it works, because when you can visualize it and see what's going on, I think that's it's a really nice introduction, and good for education as well, because if you're in an education environment and they want to teach synthesis, seeing everything on one place is a neat thing. Yeah,
the app is I think one of the big selling points for your stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's enough about Modal. We only give you so much time to plug your brand, but I want to talk about you, Jon Bickle, and some of the things that you've done. You were telling us off air before we came on about some of the things that you've had to do because of your job in looking after customers, and maybe some relatively well-known people. The first one I'm going to have to ask you about is what Phil told us to ask you about, and that's your Prince story, because apparently it's a good one. So would you mind telling us all about Prince and how you became involved?
Right, spoiler alert, I never met Prince. All right,
okay.
There was a certain situation, early 90s. not that many people had mobile phones actually at the time, but Sennheiser wanted us to have mobile phones. I'm going down the M3 towards my house, and I get a call from a guy called Matt Larson. I think he now works for Digico, but anyway, he sounded panicked and said, "I'm Prince's tour manager. There's been an awful mistake. He has 4 gold microphones, and there's 2 on stage." So I'll need to explain that picture in a minute. But there's one. There's one that goes on the piano. One goes where he sings up in the front with his guitar, and there's one backup, and the other one goes to the Sennheiser distributor to make sure they're all working. We've sent 2 to Sennheiser, so if something goes wrong, we walk on with a black one with curtains. It's that intense.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, look. So I drove back to the offices, found where the microphones were in the service station. I then drive to Wembley and go, how the hell am I going to get in? The mobile phones didn't have like last number redial. I can't really remember the name of the guy because it's like a 2-hour journey. I'm almost home from something to that. So I'm thinking, right, everyone's amassing outside, and I'm thinking, right, what do I do here? I thought, well, I'll go around the side. So I speak to I don't know, and there's security guards there with all the trucks, and said, hi, I got to deliver some mics to a guy. They went, oh, well, not bad. You turn up in a suit, which is unusual for the usual nutters we get. But on you go, sir. Right? Or before we call the police. I mean, no, honestly, I have got these microphones, and they're for Prince's tour manager. So what's his name? I can't remember. I'm sorry. And they said, no, go. And then I went, how do I do this? So I said, I know what I do. I said, can I have your lapel? Because they had little, numbers. I said, can I just have your numbers, please? Because when Prince goes on stage tonight and there's no microphones, I just want to make sure we know who stopped it going on. Right? So I played a bit of tech, and they suddenly start, I don't know. There was, but I said, I got another point. I went to my car, I picked up this wooden box, black velvet, and I picked up, can you put the picture up again?
Oh, yeah, hang on.
Right, yeah.
There we go.
I said, I got the microphone out, and I myself did the 007 pose, holding my wrist. I said, how much of a nutter do you think I have to be to recreate his microphone? And worse still, I've got 2 of them. Right? Are you getting this?
Yeah.
Right? So eventually they found this guy. He didn't get me in that night, but I sat next to George Michael the next night, and then he took me side stage, and I watched, chin drop watching this band and then play. It was astonishing, but it's for me, it was like watching some of your favourite musicians ever from a couple of feet away. It was just astonishing. So,
it's a privileged thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I went to see him. I mean, I've seen him loads of times, but I took my ex-wife and my best mate. Me and my best mate were both big Prince fans, and we went down to Wembley Arena. He was doing a one-off gig. It was kind of early 2000s, I think, or late 90s, early 2000s. That kind of transition-y type period. And it was him. There was Shaka Khan and Larry Graham doing the support. And we got to Wembley, and there was just around the corner, I don't know if you remember, there was like a McDonald's or a Wimpy or something, and we went and got a burger, and my wife had a chicken thing, and it was off. But she didn't realise she ate it, and we got into Wembley Arena, into our seats, and all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, I feel terrible. So we whisked her down to the medical area, which is stage right. And whilst she's in there throwing her guts up, I'm side stage watching Prince and Larry Graham doing something crazy. I was only there for a few minutes before we got shifted out, but that's probably the only thing I can thank my ex-wife for.
I bet you wish that mobile phones at that time had cameras on them, because you wanted the Facebook cover photo of Yeah.
So I've also been thrown off stage I haven't got time to tell you this story, but AC/DC, would you believe?
Okay.
Right?
You've got time.
Okay. So through Genesis, there's a guy called Jeff Banks, who went from Genesis to being AC/DC's kind of top roadie. And he called me up and said, we're in deep trouble here. I'm going, why? And he goes, we're in the Birmingham NIA. The production crew have found out that the last song has the cannons for those
Oh, yes.
about to rock, we salute you. And basically there's a pyrotechnic gun which hits a sampler with all the and it doesn't work. And you work for Akai, please help. I said, I'm a sales guy, I'm not a techie guy, So, but he said, look, this could be like I lose my gig, I went, okay. So I drove up. You would never have seen this Heath Robinson rack on the side of the stage, because it had old Yamaha samplers, it had all stuff, and some of them that weren't working, but the LED light was working. And I said, look, I couldn't get it to work. I said, the only thing I can do is put that sample on all 128, slots.
Yeah.
So it's going to work. So basically, you get a 25 pulse per second gun that does the pyrotechnics. That converts the MIDI up through, would you believe, 3 other samplers to the Akai.
Wow.
So I do it, still not working. So I'm then on the phone to America, and they said, no, you have to be in sequence mode for that to work. Okay, so do it. I said, tell you what, I'll save it as an auto load, so next time we switch it on, you're done. Good. I press save, power cut. No. The whole of the thing is complete black. And I'm going, what's going on now? Has it saved? I don't know. Then all the crew have deserted. They're now they're under the stage doing the racks, they're going crazy. A security guard says to me, say, what are you doing? I went, I'm trying to help them with the equipment. He goes, you got your badge? I went, I didn't have a badge, just got to play with you. I was frog marched out. And I went to see the front of house guy, and basically he said, did it work? I don't know. So we waited for the last song to come on, and he said, well, I'll give it the beans. And he gave it the beans. It did work, and I think he blew about 100 speakers, because it was it was like I think my ears were still ringing about 2 days afterwards. So, but again, you get yourself in these kind of like weird situations. But it was you talked about side stage, and it jogged in memory. So
that's an amazing story.
Yeah,
listen, so there was a thing that popped up in the Facebook group today. One of our colleagues over there. Let me see if I've got the screen. I believe it's this one. So, this was Robert Dorschel. Put this post up, shared this post. He put it on his page, and then he shared it to the group. And I thought it was let me just get rid of this. So, I thought it was a really interesting point, because it's something we've kind of touched upon. And seeing as we've got Jon here, who, formerly of Akai and all of that lot there, and mainly because you're in, that side of the commercial side of the business, and you actually threw your hat in the ring with this. But let me just explain. So, I don't know if this is showing up as too small on the screens, but... basically, Robert was having a rant, and he was saying, in a jovial way. But this is kind of a request from a musician, basically, who wants something new from a hardware sampler that we don't seem to have anymore. And he wants something that has stereo inputs and outputs, perhaps 8 assignable multiple outs, even if over USB, chromatic playback, minimum 64 note polyphony, velocity layering, splits, all sorts of looping, filters, envelopes, modern storage media, WAV and AIF compatibility and import, 5-pin MIDI, USB I/O, screen display, preferably a touchscreen, the ability to actually sample in the box without a computer. Essentially, basically describing what hardware samplers used to be, but also to have extras, things such as transitioning from other sampler or existing library formats, granular, time stretching, morphing, random start points, round robin options, digital inputs and outputs, and to make it no larger than a VHS cassette. So for those of you who are young enough, or not old enough, should I say, we're talking sort of about, I don't know, 8 inches by 5 inches across. Maybe additional thickness for all the I/O. And you can't see why we can't just dust off the schematics for an Akai S1000, slap it on an Android tablet or Arduino display and input-output unit, shrink it down with modern components, and then pump them out for, initially he said $399, but then kind of took John's comments on board and said, well, maybe it's going to be about twice that. But for keyboard players. And I know that this was kind of put out there slightly tongue-in-cheek, but there was an honesty behind it, a kind of requirement, and then, a bunch of people replied and said, oh, well, things like the Octatrack exist, and there's the 1010 Music black box, and there seem to be units that tick boxes, but not all of them. And then, of course, you've got the MPCs, and I actually typed about a 5-paragraph response to this, and I thought, no, do you know what? Actually, this would actually make a rather interesting kind of show topic to kind of discuss amongst ourselves and with our fellow chat room people. So I think Ben himself has said that we would love to have a proper hardware sampler again, because I love hardware samplers. I love the ease of use, the simplicity, and I've got a whole bunch of them here, and I still really like using them. But we seem to have shifted into this world of just people like Christian Henson and Spitfire Audio bringing out massive, super hyper detailed sample libraries, which are fantastic and have their place. But we seem to have kind of forgotten the simplicity and the fun of having a hardware sampler, sticking a microphone input or an audio input into it, sampling something, whether it's you farting in the bathroom, or bird song out the window, or running a stone down a piece of metal guttering, and then creating something musical from it. Nowadays it's all about libraries and libraries and libraries. I wish there was something out there that did this. But John, you made this point in the chat that to build something new like this isn't just a case of one or two guys sitting down and saying, oh yeah, let's make this. There's a lot that goes into it, from design and all tooling and all that kind of stuff. How close do you think we are or do you think we're even close to getting back to hardware sampling, or is it a dead thing? And does Robert's idea hold any merit?
I think it holds merit. I just thought that the pricing was the bit. I mean, the specification and the sort of things that it did. I was going, yeah, and then he went $399. I went, no, that's going to be very tricky for people to get to. As I said, I think in my reply, I think the 1010 is probably the closest for the money. But I think when I speak to my colleagues, we've got a soft spot for hardware samplers. Mm-hmm. In that, I do think that there's a place for them. But you notice how few of them are actually sampling keyboards. Yeah. Is it Prophet XL or something? There's none that are really inbuilt to keyboards. Yeah. So, we definitely like the idea of a hardware sampler. But again, I'm either target demographic because I'm an old git and I got brought up with that. So I'd feel very comfortable in the hardware arena, because I was working in a shop with Prophet 2002s and the MPCs, etc. But for me personally, I think there's a place, but I think that people have to be realistic, because once you get above so much, we go, well, hang on a minute, you're at MPC 1 territory here, and therefore So, and it's very hard to compete with those guys because they're good at what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose in terms of keyboards, you've got workstations. I'm not familiar with the workstations of the present day, but they all have some kind of sampling feature, do they? Ben,
they did. It was a trend for a while to try and put as much functionality as you could in a workstation, but it seems that recent recent offerings, they've dropped the sampling.
That's right.
I don't think any of the
They don't.
recent
And never
ones
do.
Yeah,
No.
I think it's totally wrong because there's a lot to be done with samples. You know, it's a very creative way of working with samples, and I think, like Robert said in his post, that there's, you know, we would like a machine that can bring that kind of workflow into the modern day. You know, like that. You can just see at the back of me there the control surface off the S6000.
Yeah.
I've looked at that many a time and thought, imagine if that was just the sampler, just that.
Likewise, yeah.
And you know, it had an SD card slot on it. You could put stuff into it, and you know, a couple of MIDI ports, USB on back of it. You could even do your audio through USB, you know, if you're lacking on space. But we need that technology being reinvented now, like they've done with so many other things, because there might be users out there now that weren't there the first time round who do something completely new with it. Yeah. You know, they like, if we get our hands on samplers, the first thing is either to try and sound like the Art of Noise or to sound like Fatboy Slim. You know, that's what we do. But like kids who you know, they're just, oh, what do I do with this? They're going to go down a completely different route with it, I'm sure of it, and it's quite exciting. They should be given a chance to mess with a current version of that technology. Of course, they can go out and buy second-hand versions and do like the hip-hop crew did with the 808, but I don't know.
Yeah.
There are a number of manufacturers, though, aren't there? I mean, you've got Polyend.
Yeah, say Polyend do one, don't they?
You've got, there are you know, a lot of manufacturers still in their area, so it's not like there is none. Yeah. And if there isn't something of that specification that Rob was looking for, then it's probably a good reason they can't make it for that money.
Yeah. That's very true.
It's just like, yeah, I looked at that list and went, yeah, I'd buy that.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be something but sitting this side of the fence, I just know how much some of this stuff costs to build and how long it takes. So, I mean, most of the Akai stuff is done in Cambridge.
That's right. Yeah.
But those are very, very smart guys.
Yeah.
And it takes them a long time to do this stuff. So it's a lot of investment for a manufacturer to then jump into all those very established brands, and then try and create their own vibe in their own market. So I can understand where it's not a slam dunk. Yes, people want it, because when they go, right, yeah, but it's $1,000 or $1,500, go, hang on a minute. There's lots of other people that do stuff like that, whether it be native or Akai. So. Yeah,
sure. I mean, this is what Ben was sort of referring to. So the S6000 front panel. This is, you know, what bolts onto the front, but you know, with a 10-foot or 15-foot extension lead, it can sit on your desk. But this has this, you know, this lovely, nice big screen. Look at that! Oh, look at that! Oh, weird! How weird is that? But you know, this nice big screen, lots of, you know, actual buttons and rotaries and what have you. And I guess, I don't know, I've never opened this up, but I guess that underneath here that it's mostly empty plastic area. So that, you know, there is the place where you can have your connectivity. And nowadays, you know, you can have, you know, USB doesn't take up a lot of space. If you don't want to use 5-pin MIDI, you can, you know, get all that on there. You know, a decent number of ins and outs. Something like this with a battery compartment and some decent ins and outs of that size, I think would go down the storm. And I always look at this and think, you know, that's the sort of form factor of a Sculpt, or that's the form factor of an Uno synth, you know, the IK stuff. So there's definitely a market. There's definitely a niche there for small desktop stuff that can do cool things. But, you know, who was it? Wagyu said in the chat room, you know, about the Prophet XL. Yeah, it's difficult to get samples into it. That's because it's not a sampler. It deals with samples like lots of other things do nowadays, but it's not natively a sampler. I mean, people go on about Contact. You know, you can't sample in Contact, which is why I went down the road with Emu and Emulator X, and then of course that died, and you end up having to kind of come back to where everybody else is. But there was a thing a few years ago. It was a video that was kind of doing the rounds of this kind of tabletop sampler. Do you remember this, with the waveform? And you had, it was very simple and basic, and it had sliders, just like the old Akai S612 had sliders, where you could, you slid them in to get your start and end points, and it was just like really simple and intuitive and hands-on, and everybody lost their collective minds over this thing. Where is it? It's gone. It doesn't. It was vaporware.
It is great.
Can I just go back to for those people who didn't see what my post was regarding the subject? The problem is you could get something which is pretty cool, and you think, right, okay, that's good. And if you're building just for two end users, but when you have to factor in so many other different elements, this is where it becomes untenable, because each step of the chain has to have some costs attached to it, and licenses, writing manuals in different. People don't think about, okay, well, how do we get a German manual or an Italian manual or something? This all has to be factored in. You have to pay people to do this, and these are technical manuals as well. Yeah. So it's not just like, I'll get my mate who speaks a bit of Italian. You have to, there's lots of costs, and when you add it up, a good idea on paper and an ideal sort of price, the time you've done it, it's treble, quadruple, and suddenly it can't come to market because people say, that's great, but it's too much money. Yeah. It's a never ending circle.
It's a real balance that needs to be struck, isn't it?
Well, I think an interesting place to go would be on the opposite side of the spectrum, because when I first started reading that list of, like, I'd like it to have this and this and this, and then it ended up being whatever, $400 on the post, I was thinking a little more in terms of the high-end market, where some of these things have kind of been... people have been attacking them from the corners, but not really following through with a complete, good idea instrument. And, the Prophet X is one that I was thinking of. And, where, it's got a hybrid architecture. It's a synthesizer keyboard, but it's, I guess, a pain in the butt to use. You're stuck with the filters that it has. There's not really a lot of flexibility. And then, as Wagyu was saying, it was very difficult to deal with samples, and it doesn't sample. But to kind of go along those lines, because there's so many great hybrid devices out now, that one of the things that I would love to see would be a very high-end, type of sampling keyboard synthesizer, where it had... in some ways the quantum is again a little bit kind of in this direction, but if you could do it with something that handles samples, that it's sample playing and sample making and editing was its main thing, not just we've tacked this on and it can play this stuff or whatever, or it's you can play samples but you can't edit them. If there was a keyboard to come out like that, I think that would be quite interesting, and maybe it would be too small of a market, especially if it was expensive to really do it right. But if you had something like that, and you perhaps had both digital and analog filters, if you could get some way to do that, that would be quite an interesting device for me, who's somebody that's not a sample user. I use Logic Sampler, and that's about the extent of what I do. But for the type of people like me that are more into a little bit more traditional music making, playing the instrument, something like that would be a lot of fun, especially if it has things like granular that you can do with that. That would be an incredibly fun playground to make interesting sounds. Yeah. But again, is it going to be a profitable venture? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, granular is definitely a fantastic. It's probably, in my opinion, it's one of the best things that's happened to sampling in many years, because that ability to take any sound and then just really go down to this really minute level and create something from that. harks back to what sampling was not originally designed to do, but was certainly the way that people like Peter Gabriel were using it very early on in creating new sounds from something that was completely different, So, and that kind of brings me to another point. So when digital sampling first came around, it was in a computer. It was in the Fairlight, and you had to sit there with a keyboard and a light pen, and it was within this big expensive machine. And people loved sampling, and they just didn't love the price of it. And so then you got people like Dave Rossum, who then obviously came out with the emulator, where he took the sampling bit and basically created a very small custom computer that sat inside a keyboard. And now we've extracted sampling and put it into a keyboard. It's a third of the price. It sounds great. It's easy to use. And EMU had a huge amount of success in the first half of the 1980s with their keyboard samplers because of that. Because they took this fantastic new technology, gave it a great UI, made it much more affordable than many other things, and of course followed by the likes of Ensoniq and then Akai, of course, with their rack samplers. And so it started in the computer, it came out and lived in its own little world, and then by the end of the century, we're back in the computer again with software samplers, be it Contact or whatever. And I just wondered, is this one of these typical cyclical processes that we're going round, and maybe now we see a demand for hardware samplers again? Or is this because the true home of sampling has always been inside a computer because of the very nature of what sampling is? It's working with digital audio files, and it can be kind of you certainly can benefit from a visualization of that process, although it's not entirely necessary, because I think sampling with ears is probably the most fun way of doing it, is just listening as you just tweak it to get it right. But I just think we moved it started in computers, it moved out, it's now back in there. Will it ever come out the other side again? What huge benefits would hardware sampling give everyone?
I think that live.
Yeah.
There's some wonderful libraries for Contact and stuff, and
but wasn't that the whole point of the Prophet X, was that now you could take your samples on the road? Well, that was one of the big selling points, wasn't it?
Yeah, you got like round robins, multi-layer samples, all this, and the old sampling hardware can't deal with that level of complexity or the amount of storage needed in some cases. So your only option there is to go out with a laptop with main stage running or whatever. That's it'd be really nice just to have a self-contained unit for that reason as well.
But I suppose laptops now are much more reliable than they used to be, and a lot more musicians are they're not being more brave taking laptops out, because laptops will just invariably work, whereas before, maybe 10 years or so ago, they weren't so reliable.
I kind of wonder why there hasn't been sort of in a different manner of speaking, a hybrid instrument that, if people having a laptop alongside of a controller or something, if it feels like a little bit like a separate instrument, it would be an interesting idea to make a sampler in keyboard form, but that relied upon like a tablet device, like a iPad Pro or something. So you've got a device that you use at home already. It's got, half a terabyte of memory, and it's got the latest, M1 processors or whatever. And you've got a computer that's all ready to go, plus a large 12 touchscreen, 11 to 13-inch touchscreen that's already set up. That the hardware that you would use to go with it could be a lot less money. Plus, you'd have that instead of like a Quantum, which its screen is still fairly small. I mean, it's a large touchscreen for a synthesizer, but compared to say an iPad, it's pretty small. It would be kind of interesting to see something like that used. I mean, the problem is that, it does rely on some other, iOS or Android device to be used with it. But it might be kind of one way to attack a problem where, might be very appealing to some musicians. I'm not talking about using the iPad as your recording device or using GarageBand on it or something like. trying to make it as much of a whole instrument as possible, where you're not using a keyboard with a separate device, but it just sits along with it and becomes part of your instrument.
Yeah, I liked what Akai did and Alesis some years ago, and John will remember these. So Akai had a keyboard controller with an iPad dock, and Alesis had the I/O dock, which was just the dock with all the connectivity, which I thought was fantastic. Bought into it, and of course then Apple changed the design of the iPad, and then Alesis had to bring out an adapter to make the second iPad work in there, and then of course the next iteration changed the bloody connector. So we went from a 30 pin to a lightning, So
yeah, that's why you can't have it be a dock that it plugs into, because you have different sized devices. You might have different brands of devices, but if you have a cable going to the iPad, you can whatever, if it's a Lightning or USB-C or whatever you're using, it's going to work because it's just a cable and at most the expense is another cable.
Yeah.
You still have to get in and out. The thing about the Alesis I/O was that it had XLRs on the back. It's like, here's my high Z for my guitar, and it was throwing a curveball every time they had a new iPad, and that's going to happen every like a year or 6 months. There's something new. So, and as you said, when it went from 32 pin, which was a far sturdier and was kind of a fixed plate, it went slotted in.
Yeah.
And suddenly you had to have a cable, and it was not the same.
No, and it was. I mean, I was gutted because I went and bought my I/O dock, and it was good for about 6 months, and then, things. You want to change your iPad. Well, now you can. That renders the I/O dock useless. The same. What was the name of the Akai one? Because they did two, didn't they? One that had the iPhone dock, and then there was another one which had like an angled connector for the. If somebody could come up with a really clever way that you could have a tablet dock into this thing regardless of the connector, whether it was a Lightning connector or whether it's a USB connector or whatever, and just have a really elegant kind of way of integrating that, because I think iPad apps or iOS apps or mobile music apps, if we just want to be general about it, have come on such a long way and are actually offering a lot of the features that maybe Robert was talking about in his post, but without the connectivity. So if we could have something where there's an elegant way of marrying the two, allowing for Apple's everyone picks on Apple, but every tablet or phone manufacturer changes their design or their connectors, adds them, removes them, whatever. Synth Station, thank you Jason Crouch, the Akai Pro Synth Station, blast from the past. Yes, it's an interesting thing, but I would love people to rediscover the because obviously digital sampling started as a cheat. It was Peter Vogel saying, we can't make our synthesizer sound the way we want it to sound. How can we get it to sound like a piano or a violin? Oh, well, let's see if we can digitally record stuff. And so the very dawn of sampling was actually all about copying instruments. But very quickly, very clever people and very creative people said, actually, we don't have to record other instruments. We can make our own instruments by smashing a television screen in or blowing over the top of a piece of scaffold pipe. And then you have this kind of world of weird and wonderful instruments that were kind of densely populating pop music of the early 1980s.
One thing to kind of chime into this, Andy, EMX Gold mentions, with wireless connectivity, that brings up some interesting options as far as being able to use mobile devices with some sort of sampler or sampling keyboard, and being able to have kind of a remote service to do that from.
Dare I say, WIDI? Wireless MIDI. It exists. Everyone take a drink. But it does. But obviously, wireless audio, that's a different thing. Audio needs to be, zero latency, doesn't it? Or as near to zero latency. I don't think we're quite there yet with certainly high-end audio. But no,
we're getting closer though, right? With WIDI, what's the latency on it now? 3 milliseconds. So, that's
just been improved.
That's usable. That's a usable latency between devices.
Mm-hmm. And just to point out, not that I'm on commission, I'm not on commission, but they've just announced they're counting down to the WIDI U host, which is the USB thing, which is going to be really interesting, and also the new WIDI Bud, the WIDI Bud Pro, which is the tiny little USB dongle. So if you're waiting for those kinds of things, they're on the way. But anyway, that's I'll get told off for talking about WIDI too much. It's an interesting topic, and I think that I was kind of happy to see that there was somebody else out there that thought that there should be a decent hardware sampler.
But hasn't Dave Smith sort of done this with the Prophet X a little bit? And
But it's not a sampler, is it? It's a sample plate. It's a rompler.
Oh, it can't you sample on it?
I don't believe you can sample into the Prophet X. I think it's just you import, the stuff. Which, again, this is where I think, a lot of samplers or sample playback devices are at. It is a case of just dumping in the library or bringing over sounds rather than plugging something into the back of it, hit the record button, and let the hardware itself do all the work.
I remember reading a forum post once, and somebody was asking about converting WAV files, to use on. I don't know what it was. Say it might have been an emulator 3 or whatever. You wanted to convert files to use on a different sampler, and one of the answers just summed it up perfectly. He said, if you're just converting files to play back, you're missing the whole point of the sampler. It's the conversion process going into it that gives it a unique sound.
The thing is with audio is that whether it's an EMU or an Akai or whatever, the audio file is pretty much the same. It's just as far as I'm aware, I'm not deeply technical on this, but it's just the header information of the audio file is slightly different. But you can extract the Fairlight samples. You can make them into WAV files very, very simply. There's not a big conversion process. Strip the header away and it can be used anywhere else. The conversion thing is all about the program, how the sample is processed by the sampler itself. The envelopes and what have you. But
I have a question. I have a question for the people who are watching. I have this memory of a rack, 2U rack, which you could put other people's discs into, and it read it. Now I can't remember who made that.
Oberheim.
Was it Oberheim? Yeah, I thought it was Oberheim. I thought, I must be wrong there.
Yeah.
But the fact I loved about it is when you put an Ensoniq disc in, the lights flash yellow, like on the original Mirage. I thought that is beautiful.
That's a nice touch, isn't it?
Yeah. Somebody's going to give us a model number soon, I'm sure. But there was the Oberheim that could read a whole bunch of stuff. But sample and then the sample conversion process. I don't think anybody has ever actually nailed it to the point where they've come up with an application or a piece of hardware that can translate every sample format into every other sample format.
Some pretend to be able to
DPX1.
Don't work.
Many claim to do it. Many fail to do it. I still have a Windows XP image on my Mac where I'm running CD Extract version 4 and Extreme Sample Converter 3.5 or something, because between those two I usually find that I can convert most samples from an old format into a fairly universal one. But there were some times where to get something, say, into the Fusion, we'd have to go from one format through CD Extract into some other random format, and then take that format and feed it into Extreme Sample Converter to then be able to spit it out in a usable form like a sound font or even just simple Akai files, because that's where we did most of our sound development stuff for the Fusion in an Akai S5 and an S6000. In fact, when I powered up my S6000 after it was in storage for a while, one of the first folders was the Fusion
Hollow Sun.
But all the Fusion ROM candidates that had gone into the actual unit, to sell, and then of course Steve's with his Hollow Sun stuff, which was amazing. Was the Fusion that was a sampler, wasn't it? You could sample into the Fusion.
Yeah, it had like an 8-track.
Yeah, it had the hard disk recorder. Yeah.
It was an interesting product, but I felt that they basically kind of ran out of energy from it, and that's when Steve and probably yourself came in.
Yeah.
The problem was that all the Hollow Sun stuff, which is for me the more exciting stuff, was right at the very end, and they couldn't do anything about it apparently. So it was like, okay, well, if you can wade through 200 QS sounds or something, then you got to the interesting stuff. But
that was a big problem. But because was it the Q Up Arts piano was they kept banging on about it, and I remember playing it thinking, it doesn't really sound that great. But you had to wade through a lot of stuff to get to the good bits. Anyway, look, we've got about 15-20 minutes left of the show. I don't know if we've made anybody's lives or decisions any easier. I don't know. I don't think Robert's watching, but maybe he will be on catch up. But yeah, it's interesting to see what everybody thinks, and to kind of step back. I'd forgotten all about the DPX one. Very clever little box that was. Let's have some more news. This literally did drop on our doormats just before we went on air, so we don't have any experience. Unless did anyone download it before they came on air? Chris, did you get this before? The Cherry Audio? Yeah, the Cherry Audio stuff.
No. Torsten sent me a link for it. Said they had just dropped. I went and looked at the video and sent it to you guys.
And that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, so we knew something was coming from Cherry Audio because they had teased it. But it was a very vague tease. And this is it. It's the PS20, which is their version of the MS20. And it comes in, as you can see, various different shades of black, blue, khaki green, and of course white. Strange that, because I think the new hardware MS20s are coming out in those colours as well. But yeah, shall we have a listen to it? Let's see. Let's bring this up here. Get this in the shot, and it's got the Circle of Death. There we go. Oh, buffer. Oh, being rather buffery today. So there you go. That's the PS20 from Cherry Audio. Didn't see that one coming. Nice to see John's face. Actually, look at this. Look, let's bring this back up again. Look at that. That's probably based off of my viewing habits, but advertise at the end of that one. So thoughts. MS20 in software. It's been done before in certain ways, but this is the Cherry Audio version. Of course, it's going to be rather interesting in terms of sound and price as well. Anyone got any initial opinions on this?
Yeah, well, I wonder why they've done it, really, because there seems to be plenty of MS options out there now, but it's.
But we said that about the DC06, 106, didn't we? The Juno that they did.
Yeah, but then again, they've got a completely different kind of game plan, haven't they? It's not like they're competing with everybody else. They're offering a low cost option most of the time, so maybe that's the reason behind it. I've got the Korg one, not the hardware, the software version. I'm quite happy with that, so even if it's cheap, I don't really need another one, but it'd be interesting to see if they pull it off. Like we've said before, they've had a bit of problems with filters, and the MS20 filter is pretty, recognisable. So it's going to be interesting to see if they've nailed that.
Well, according to the blurb, the very first item in the bullet list is super accurate modelling of the classic MS style high pass and low pass filters. Of course, it's easy to say that, but I guess we have to listen. Let's go to an ex-Korg person. You were excited about seeing another software version of this instrument, John?
Not especially, because it kind of it's already been done, if you know what I mean. Well, the only story I can tell you is that I think it's fair to say the senior management at Korg did not want to really adopt this product, and I think a couple of the engineers in their own time developed it, so it wasn't on Korg's time.
Right.
And then we had this big powwow at the Frankfurt Music Show where we went off site, and they had this presentation, and there was a couple of guys there that really knew their stuff and had MS-20s for 20 years, and they were asking it to do all sorts of stuff, do that and that, and they said it sounds identical. And then the senior management said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
But it was but for me, I'm happy with what's already out there. I'm sure these guys do a great job, but
it's been done. Cryss, I noticed it also comes as an instrument, but also as an effects plugin as well, so you can use it in both ways. Does that excite you?
Well, it depends on their new super accurate filter modeling, right? Because that's an area that they've been hammered over, and we've done it ourselves. Like, okay, this is cheap, but what's up with the filters? I think the most interesting part of this is that it's polyphonic.
Yes.
Because that what we've been begging Roland Cloud to do with their monophonics, like to have a polyphonic Pro Mars would be epic. I know, and then people say, "Oh, what about the Jupiter 4?" No, but the Pro Mars has an extra oscillator, which makes it better. So to have a polyphonic version of that would be fantastic. And so some of these classics, it is fun to play them. I mean, the iPhone Minimoog app can do polyphonic, and it's great. I like those sounds. I like to hear those sounds in poly, and you don't have some of the same problems you do trying to do it in analog. So that's fun. Again, the question comes back to the filter. They advertise whatever the little logo thing was, like super squelchy filter or whatever, but they didn't show any of those sounds in the videos. No. Pretty tame in the video. Like, are you afraid to show it off or what? Because that's the time that I would be expecting to hear that crazy filter, that nasty, dirty. I think it's a 6 decibel filter or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Just to go crazy with that, but like we didn't really get to hear it.
No, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of love for the MS, whether it's the 10 or the 20. It's still a highly revered and well respected machine. And as Jon said, Korg they've got the hardware version, they've got the software version, and they sound. I mean, I'm no expert on the Korg MS sound, but if somebody from Korg says it sounds like the real deal, then I'm gonna believe them. They do when they did the Oberheim 8 voice plugin, they did this comparison with actual hardware, which I was a little bit suspicious of, because they basically only had 2 SEMs there, where obviously the 8 voice is 8 of them, and that has a big bearing on the impact of the sound. It would be interesting to see if they're brave enough to do a comparison, because it's such a distinctive filter on the MS-20 that maybe they will, maybe they won't, and if they don't, are people going to say, "Oh, is that because your thing doesn't cut the mustard?" I don't know.
Well, one thing $29. One thing I do like though in this age that we're in is that there's so many classic pieces of gear that, like, oh, I'd love to have one of those. Am I going to? I mean, MS-20 is not expensive, but am I going to spend the money and have that hardware sitting around somewhere along with every other piece of vintage hardware that I would love to have? Well, no, absolutely not. But in a day where we can make digital synthesizers, whether that be hardware or software, and they're not all created equally, obviously, but there are some that are just so fantastically good that we can. They're always going to be a lot cheaper. Even if it's a couple $100, it's still a lot cheaper than hardware.
Yeah.
And so for those sounds, like if you're recording, you're making music, you're like, oh, I'd like to go to such and such a sound, but I don't want to have a $2,000 synthesizer sitting around here that I'm not using, but every once in a while, oh, I can just go to one of my plugins and grab it and use that in that track and it'll be good enough, you know.
Yeah. Somebody was asking in the chat room, John, Native VS, were you involved with Korg at the time when they brought out the DS10, you know, the Nintendo version?
Nintendo.
Yeah.
No, but I did get given one by the developer. Yeah, I was at their time, but this is, you know, we were in Japan and they sort of showed it to us. I mean, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So my son had a Nintendo, so I had a little play with it. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun, yeah. It was an interesting time when they were doing. They did the M1 as well, didn't they? There was an M1 app.
I only. It may well have done. My only memory was the
DS.
DS10. Yeah. But again, you know, Korg are a great company. They think out of the box quite. I mean, the whole story about how the Chaos Pad came is ridiculous. I don't know if you knew that one.
No, go on.
Well, there was a guy in the accounts department.
Okay.
And Kuiki, and basically I think it was the time, I'm not sure if it was like the Z1 which had the first kind of a XY pad, and I get this call, can I pick someone up from the airport, he wants to show you a new product, it's a bit hard to describe. I went okay, so I pick him up, take him to the offices of Milton Keynes, and he brings out this piece of glass with some wires, and I'm getting, what is this? And then he wants a signal, we get in, and of course within like 1 second you go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wonderful, you know, out of the box thinking. But basically he said, I think the owner of the company basically said, you're no longer in accounts, you're now in product development.
Wow.
And the whole thing is about it is I know every year, because Korg was selling a lot of Chaos Pads, every year they think, well, this is a fairly simple idea, someone's going to copy it, right? And they didn't really. I mean, Roland doesn't go. But it was, I've got a real soft spot for Korg because they have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Where's the Korg X Factor? And the Chaos Pad is a classic example of that product.
Yeah, I think of the remaining big three, you know, Korg, Roland, and Yamaha, Korg are still the ones that have got they've got some balls because they're going out and making some really. They've got the Nautilus, they've got the Kronos, they've got, you know, the workstation market that they're all involved in, and they're all much of a muchness. But Korg are doing Minilogs, Prologs, you know, the NTS1, the Volca range. Op 6, Wavestate. I mean, as much as we have ragged on those, you know, those keyboards and, you know, the price and the build quality, they're still out there making a new FM synthesizer or a new wavetable synthesizer. And of course, we've got the Modwave coming soon, which nobody's really had a good go on that yet. So, they're still doing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff is done in America, just so you know. Dan Phillips is an old friend of mine. If you're watching, Dan, hi. He will tell you, he came to our suite in NAMM, and I said the same thing to him, which is like, you've got these great ideas, but I wish you'd do a module version of it or put a better keyboard on it and charge a bit more. But again, it's probably some commercial pressures there. But I actually think Korg are doing some really good stuff right now. I do. I think the Op 6 is really interesting. Wavestate's a great product in this. So they have got a lot of stuff. I'm not clear where Yamaha are right now. That's and some of the stuff from Roland, I think, yeah, that's good. And then stuff I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm making another copy of something, make it smaller form factor.
Yeah.
You know, a Juno 106 with 4-note polyphony. I'm scratching my head, you know.
Yeah, that whole boutique stuff, it did make me scratch my head. It was just, like you say,
quite strange with the Yamaha though, isn't it? It just, I don't know. It's gone really stagnant on the synth development side, hasn't it?
Yeah,
makes me worried they're going to come out with something astonishing soon.
Yeah,
well, we hope.
I'm thinking. But it wasn't so long ago they were asking about a CS80. Would we be interested in them remaking the CS80? And then it's like, oh, we're not bothered about synths anymore. We've got the Montage and the Modi X. We don't really need anything else.
They're getting tired now, though, aren't they? Because they've been out for a while, and yeah, they've updated the OS a couple of times, but there's really nothing new about it, and they're nice instruments to a point, and I know a lot of people like the Montage. It's kind of almost an industry standard workstation now. I think it's kind of probably the flag bearer out there. And the Modi X has suffered again from kind of build quality issues. It's very plasticky, but it's got a great engine in it. But Andrew Ward posted a future music poster from around the early the early 2000s that kind of showed Yamaha's progression through the synth world. And there were some notable omissions in there, but somebody pointed out, 70s and 80s Yamaha was just like, wow, whoa, look at that, that's new, that's amazing, that's fantastic. 90s Yamaha and 2000s Yamaha, it's like, it's just like rehash they come up with an engine. There's less, how many times can we rehash it in a different box?
Yeah, and at least with the digital side of stuff, like with the Wave State and the what's the FM one?
Op6.
Op6, yeah. They're doing something interesting with that. That's kind of like, we're going back to our legacy and grabbing some stuff and making it modern. But they've got, again, like you said, that whole other area of legacy stuff that they don't touch anymore. It's like, well, they could build themselves up to the point, like, I know everybody would want a CS80, like a modern version of it, but why not start with simple analog monosynths that are in the CS series? Like, don't need to even do reissues, but build on those oscillator and filter types, put it in a more modern housing, modern features, and grab some of the sounds of the old, CS10 or 15, and then work your way up onto those. But there doesn't seem to be any progress on that. In fact, even in their virtual analog stuff, they did the reface, which, you guys talk about it's where it comes from. What was it, like the AX1N or something like that? Which is the one that it.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember. I'm not too big on Yamaha stuff other than the real old stuff, but they could do some more stuff like that, but in a slightly higher range. But it doesn't seem like it's happening. Maybe the next one that they're doing in that range of Op6 and Wave State stuff will be a virtual analog. But then again, the bummer is like, oh, how excited am I going to get about it when they're classically known for that kind of aftertouch thing, and they're not going to put it on these little boxes.
Yeah. It's funny because Yamaha seemed to be the only one of those three that. So Roland, we don't chase analog ghosts, but they did the whole boutique series. And then they've done the Roland Cloud with a whole bunch of stuff in there, and people love it, people hate it, but you've got a huge amount of retro stuff that they've gone through, and a lot of it is done very well. So that's Roland. Korg have kind of embraced their past, and we've got those rather expensive but lovely reissues that they've done of the 700S. What was the other one that they've done the ARP stuff, of course, as well. There was the other the other Korg thing that they did. Oh, the MS-20. Duh. So they're kind of reissuing it, and yes, it's a high price thing, but it's well built and it sounds great. And they've also got software synthesizers as well that hark back to the old stuff. Yamaha, apart from the refaces, which there are only 4 of them, and one of them was a DX, one of them was based off a CS kind of very loosely. Then there was the CP, which was the electric piano, and the YC, which was the organ. Other than that, if I'm not mistaken, I can't think of anything that Yamaha have done to embrace this kind of demand for classic designs, brought into the modern world, which I don't know.
Well, just the Wave State Op6.
They're Korg.
Oh
they're
yeah,
Korg.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
So I don't know. And Yamaha have such a rich legacy to mine. The whole CS range, whether you're talking the early CSs or the SYs even, and then of course the classic CSs. I wonder whether that whole thing about them saying, "Would you like us to make a CS80?" was just to deflect some stuff away from a certain competitor that's based out in the Far East with a German name, or is it a German name or is it an Austrian name? I don't know. Anyway, just Yamaha seem to have just very quietly, nobody's really hassled them about it. and they've got such a rich legacy to mine. You know, if they said we're going to come out with a CS, whether it's a 50 or an 80 or even one of the quirkier ones like the 15 or the 70M, people would get really excited about that. Similarly, if they went back and looked at maybe physical modelling like the VPs or the VLs, people might get really excited about that, but not so much with.
But surely, if you're the size of Yamaha,
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of small.
Oh, that's a nasty hum.
I think it's me.
No, let's see. Let's mute. It's not. Oh, where's that? It's nasty. Is that me?
It's coming from the edge of the solar system.
Oh, it's gone.
Oh,
That was
might have
bizarre.
been me. Might have been me.
Okay. Anyway, you were saying.
If you have the financial resources of Yamaha, surely they can come up with something that's relatively new, because some of these very small manufacturers still some really cute stuff, and they don't have anything like it. So I would like Yamaha to squirrel some money away, which would mean nothing in the grand scheme of things,
Of course,
and come out with something new. I'd love to see Yamaha back in the game. Seriously,
Yeah.
I mean, people sometimes get this confusion. Yamaha isn't my competitor. Arturia, Behringer, that. My main competitor is people like PlayStation. People
Right.
who they're taking the leisure, it's the instant gratification. Kids are not learning a musical instrument is long, hard, and we can't explain to them how brilliant it is until they've done 15, 20 years of engaging with like-minded people and all that joy that we've had playing with other people and recording stuff and creating something and playing. Here's a CD and give it to somebody.
Yeah.
It's the leisure dollar, which has been taken by people outside our industry that are really our competitors. Not I'm not. That's just my personal opinion. It's not a company opinion. That's just my opinion. That, we should try and get people into creating music and loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Yamaha, I'd say, have a rich history of not just classic synthesizers, but innovation across all sorts of musical fields. And like you said, they're not short of a few bobs, surely. So yeah, we'll see.
I reckon I've got something huge in development,
You think?
and this is the calm before the storm. It's got to be.
Yeah, I'd like to get
been
excited.
Such
I mean,
big players in it. They're not just going to give it up.
Geez, the amount of Yamaha stuff that I've poured money into over the last few years. I love Yamaha. I think I love their paradigm. I like the the way they do stuff. I like their design.
I've got the Motif rack in it.
Oh,
and the build quality on that, it's just, I know it's only a 1 unit rack, but it's so solid, and it sounds great.
Yeah.
I know it's been replaced really with the montage, but the sounds on that are great. Whenever you need your stock sounds when you're working on something and you need a bog standard something, the Yamaha's bog standard is much better than everybody else.
And if you look at the last 20 odd years, the Yamaha workstation, whether it's been a Motif or a Montage, or I forget what was the one before Motif. I can't remember the names now, but those have always been the ones when you see people in big studios. It's those that you see on the shelf. You don't see Phantom so much, or whatever Korg have got. Sorry, Chris, you were saying.
Yeah, I think that perhaps that is the case because their big updates. You remember, I don't know, it was a year ago or so. I think it was after the show we were starting to do the show. We're going to have a big update, and it was montage in a different color and a software
white
update.
montage.
And you can't milk that stuff any longer. You got to do something. And it's hard to say. Is it them just being very too conservative with their designs, or is it some long-term development coming to fruition? Wouldn't it be great to see a new workstation from them?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose also we have to take into account that the last 18 months with the pandemic and, of course, the resulting, chipgate or whatever you want to call it has probably, not helped. But again, Yamaha, I mean, do they still make their own chips? John, do you know? Are they still in that business?
I'm not close to that. I'm sorry.
No.
So,
I just want, because that was the big thing with back in the day with Yamaha, was that they had their own IC manufacturing, and everything was just done in house, and so they could afford to just mass produce and send it out.
It gets a seeming like the COVID is used. There are some things that it's really seriously affecting, especially in hardware. But on some sides of it, it seems like it's become more of an excuse. Because I was reading a thread on like the Sound Toys. Their software suite went on sale, and like, well, it's old, it's like 6 years old. Like, when's a new version come out? And then people are like, well, it's COVID. Like, they're software developers. How is that affecting them at all?
Yeah,
there's no hardware involved. They don't have to source chips. They can sit at home and have meetings on Zoom if there's more than one person and write software. Like, why is that a problem?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Very good point. Come on, Yamaha, let us know. Send us some good stuff, because I think it would be lapped up. So I think we're kind of out of time. A couple of other small things, but they're not really, massive. There's the new dipole from Sinevibes.
Yeah,
which was an interesting
these
thing.
are the two that I downloaded.
Oh, right, so they're the ones.
They are as well. They are. I downloaded the TAL filter.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look. Do you know what, Ben? Because it's you. Let's very quickly look. Let's do this one first. This is the TAL. I'm going to hand it over to you. You can tell us all about TAL Filter 2.
Right. Well, this is the TAL filter 2. And after downloading it, Mickey. After downloading it, I was pleasantly surprised to find that it's a really creative filter that you can set on. You've got like various modes that you can select from the pull down, so you can have it just. It's for modulating things, so you can do pan. You can do band pass filter, low pass filter, high pass filter, and some other things as well. But you can't do them, as far as I could tell from my brief time with it, you can't do them at the same time. But you could have multiple instances inserted onto a track and have your filter being controlled off one and your pan being controlled off another.
Okay.
It's really good. Even using it after a few minutes, really, I'd come up with a rhythmical filter movement, a modulation that was in a rhythm just by moving these things. The stereo effect's really weird as well. It duplicates it and offsets it on the other side, so you've got your sound and then it gets duplicated and delayed slightly. It's quite a good effect. That alone is quite a good. But it's free, isn't it?
Is it?
I think it's free.
Yes,
it's free.
Wow.
And that is amazing because it's a very useful thing. And
so the other one
there, yeah.
And the other free filter is the Rift. I don't remember what I sent a link, but I think it was last week and we didn't get around to it. But what are they called? Rift Audio or something. They have a free filter. Again, it's a stereo filter where you can have offset cutoff frequencies for each side, which is like what the Matriarch does. And I love that sound. And they're going to be coming out. I guess we'll probably talk about the full version when it comes out this month.
Yeah, really good. Get it. It's free. It's really useful. And
awesome.
Yeah, there's no negatives with this, really. It'd be
well,
nice
I didn't realise it was free. Otherwise,
it'd be nice if you could stack things.
Yeah, I read the blurb. Isn't this the one where it's basically a university project, and he's now going on to do something else, and this company have.
Oh no, that
was is that the other one?
That was the Tube Preamp from Phil Audio.
All right, my mistake.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, that was something actually. Well, before we'll come to that one, but I want to give Ben his moment in the spotlight here. So we've done that one. What was the other one, Ben?
The
Sinevibes.
Yeah.
So this is actually quite interesting. This one. Let me just do that again because I forgot to click the audio button. Let me just share my screen.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll explain that I put a post in the group not so long ago saying that I was after some decent modulation effects because I've just been using stock Cubase things for, chorus and flanger and phaser. And I am actually after a decent... Well, with working on 80s music, as I was saying to Cryss in the week, Everything's got flanger on it, off phaser.
Phantom flanger.
Everything.
What's phantom flanger?
I never said.
I thought it was somebody on
flanger.
Tiz was.
Yeah, the phantom flanger. No, everything's got phaser or flanger on it, hasn't it?
Okay.
And so I'm after a decent one. I downloaded this before, only the demo, but it's not dear anyway. It's not expensive, and it's brilliant. It is really good.
Shall we have a listen?
Yeah, it's easy to use, and
So is that through zero thing? Is it that bit at that's like really high at and then just kind of fills your head?
Yeah, so it's when the delay line is out of phase with your main signal. But the thing is, like, usually bucket brigade flangers don't do through zero, and it refers to like the old tape flanging. Okay. And so as you know, you got one tape reel that's going, and then the other one you touch your hand to the side of it, it slows down, so it gets latent in the in time compared to, here, let me do it this way, it gets latent in time compared to the real time. And then what happens is you let your hand go, and the motor of the machine, you know, would allow it to speed up, and it'd actually go in time a little bit past your dry signal. And so if they're out of phase, there would be a total cancellation of sound, since they're both the same signal. So in digital, you can do it really quite easy, but you have to delay the dry signal a certain amount or have some sort of look forward on it. But again, with this, so with the hardware, you usually don't see it if it's analog. But there has been Fox Rocks did a flanger, the Paradox, I think it was, and they actually used 2 bucket brigade delay lines. So the dry signal would also be delayed a little bit, so that the modulated delay signal could cross past it and do through zero, which was quite clever. So yeah, it's a,
I like that sound. Yeah, I say that the sound is really it's very interesting, but I think you can get bored of it quite quickly, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
they got bored of it in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, true thing. So. Let's just quickly touch on the one that Jon mentioned, because I think that this is a really interesting point. So this is the what's it called? It's called the Tube Preamp from, is it DDMF? I don't know, because DDMF. Let's bring this up on screen. Tube Preamp. There we go. Now you brought this to our attention, Cryss, because within this plug-in here, this was, as Jon said, it was developed by a guy who's kind of gone off to university now, so you can get this for free, but you can literally like change every part of this circuit, can't you? So it's a very simple single 12AU7 circuit, and you can see it's a dual triode there. And then again, resistors, capacitors, and it's easier if you know what stuff does, like you know what changing the capacitor value, the cathode bypass cap, or the high pass filter in and out of it, or whatever, but you can still play, even if you don't, you can still play around with stuff, change the voltage on it. And it doesn't have a ton of gain. I'm kind of curious why they went with 12AU7 and not 12AX7, because 12AX7s are the kind of standard preamp tube for a guitar amplifier, and they have 5 times as much gain as a 12AU7. So 12AU7 has about a factor of 20, and 12AX7 a factor of 100. So there's not a whole lot a huge amount of drive. This is not like a distortion pedal. But it does sound really good, and actually playing it this week, I used it before an amp modeler, so I tried it with Amplitube and some Neural DSP ones, and then tried, I was messing around with the values to get a certain overdrive, and then also using it to boost the amp modelers, and got some pretty cool sounds out of it. Yeah. So it's a fun little play. Like it's a very much a nerdy plugin. I'm nodding here like I know what you're talking about. I really don't.
Yeah.
I really don't. I have no idea about any of this stuff. red wire and black wire. Yeah, exactly.
It sounded impressive though, Chris.
It did. Yeah, I was.
Really,
very
Don't cut the blue wire on it though. That's the one,
But as John points out, this has been designed by a guy called Philip, Philip Bulling, as part of his thesis work, and he's moved on, but they didn't want to let this thing go past, so they've put it out there, and it's free of charge.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Anything else did you try, Ben, or is that it?
I think that was it.
That was it. Yeah, because I don't think there's. I was going to mention this one, but oops, wrong button. Akai Multimedia have launched a new compressor as part of their T-Rax thing. I downloaded it, but they call it the Swiss Army knife. It's the Comprexxor. What is this based on? I couldn't figure this out.
Distressor.
Right, that's it. Okay, so looks nice, and if you have Total Studio Max or Total Studio 3 Max, this is completely free of charge. You need to claim it before the end of June, but there are other deals for people that own other elements of the Akai Multimedia stuff. I mean, judging by their previous T-Rack stuff, this is going to be pretty good, I'm sure, but I just haven't got around to playing with it. And did anybody else by any chance?
I don't have it yet.
No.
This is the one that I thought was really missing from their T-Rax collection. I mean, they've got so many great things in there, and this was kind of an obvious one that was missing, and very much a very popular. I don't know how much in electronic music, but in rock music, this is one of the iconic studio pieces, and the way that it saturates and compresses, and also. It'll be interesting to hear it. I'll probably wait till the price goes down a bit.
Yeah. Do you not have T? I thought you had T-Rax.
I do have T-Rax, but this would still cost me almost $70. I don't have Max or anything, so
gotcha.
I have to wait for it because I'm not as important as Robbie Puricelli and get it for free.
Hey, I'm not that important because I chased them up about my Uno Synth Pro, which they promised me like a year ago, and I see people coming up on Facebook and YouTube now with, oh, look at me, I've got my Uno Synth Pro. So onto my contacts. Oh, where's mine? And apparently they're very limited in numbers. They're COVID. That was the excuse. COVID. Yeah, all right, whatever. I'm not flavour of the month anymore. But anyway,
COVID.
As soon as we get it. Then we'll be showing it off here, as we have done with other things that we can thank one of our guests for. So that about wraps it up for the week. Thank you, John. Let's bring you back in here. There we go. That's the one. Thank you, John. It's been a real pleasure. I mean, I know you were a little bit anxious about coming because you thought, oh, nobody's going to like me.
That's not that. I thought, am I going to show them spreadsheets? That's my world, But can I just say one thing is, thanks you guys for supporting the synth community. It's really great, and we certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure the other manufacturers do. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's nice to hear. Yeah.
I don't want to say you're talking yourself up as such a square with spreadsheets and stuff, and this is one of the funniest guys on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, no, shall I say it? You still owe me a headphone jack.
All right, from Synthfest.
From Synthfest, yeah. Synthfest loading day, right? So John, what's the
Jackson? Yeah.
Jackson, that's it. John and Jackson turn up with a prototype Argon 8, or it's literally just gone on sale. You weren't even going to be there, were you? About the week before, I think it was all very last minute, and I'm there with the IK people, and I've got the Fairlight and everything. And John goes, can I have a headphone jack, please? I've got a bag full of them. Gave it to him, never seen it since. Biggest mistake you can ever make is give your headphone jacks to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but hey, look.
Schoolboy error.
Yeah, but you've more than made up for it, I think. So I cannot moan about that. Listen, John, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and we'd love to get you on again soon and tell us more of your stories. You didn't tell us about the Beatles one that you had, so we're going to get that in. We'll have to get that in at some other time. But thank you very much indeed. Hope that you're well, and we'll see you in the Premier League this coming season at last.
Certainly will do.
Yeah,
you're going to come down to ours then, yeah?
If we can, if it's allowed, definitely.
Yeah.
definitely.
I'll put you
Nice
up.
one. It's a deal.
Put some fresh straw down in your room. You know,
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was going to say I was going to return the favour, but maybe I won't. Chris, have you got anything lined up for this week? Anything interesting?
Well, I've got some schematics printed out. Finally, I grabbed the 2600 service manual, which is nice, and I'll start looking at ordering parts and then all the rest of the regular stuff that I do.
Awesome. Good stuff. I can't wait to hear it. I just want to hear it.
Yeah.
So, Ben, how about you? Yeah. Final prep.
Picking up some lights tomorrow. We got bought a new van. We're getting that all branded up. We're going buying some
branded up van.
Yeah.
What kind of van?
Oh, it's the best kind of van. Transit van.
It's a transit, of course.
Yeah.
Good man.
So we're getting that branded up. I'm picking up these moving headlights tomorrow. We got a real good deal on them. We got 4 of them all flight cased and ready to go. So we'll be using those. And Sunday I'm going down to Wales to get the Matrix Brute, and I'll be playing with that. I'll be playing with that for most of the week, and also fixing my JD. Finally, I am doing it this weekend as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I don't think I'm doing this weekend. I'm just going to take it easy after the shenanigans of this week. I've got the RX-11 I want to play with. I've also got an MCS2 coming, the Yamaha MIDI control station to play with, so that'll be fun. And I want to get around to doing that CE25 video, because somebody posted some stuff up. I think it was in another group talking about the CE25, and it seems to be getting a bit more attention these days. So I might try and do something along those lines. Anyway, listen, thanks everyone for joining us. We had another bumper crowd in tonight. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. We didn't get to mention you all by name. We are not ignoring you. We are watching what you say, and we appreciate everything. As I said before, if you want to join us online outside of the show, then of course you can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and of course you can catch up with all of the shows here on YouTube, and you can email us as well. And of course, finally, just one last plug: if you want to donate, then the links just down below there. Any and all donations gratefully received. Welcome to all the new members in the Facebook group. It's great to have you on board. I hope if there's anybody new that's watching today, then hope you'll see what we're all about and continue to support us and the community that we're kind of serving with this. So last but not least, let's remind you of some upcoming guests that we've got. So next week, who have we got next week? So his album came out today. This is Michael Oakley. So Michael Oakley will be joining us next week. He's a Glaswegian living over in North America. He's a pretty big deal on the kind of the synthwave type scene. He's one of the better ones for sure out there. New album Odyssey came out today. Go check it out. It's on New Retro Wave. And it's really, really good. You know, we were lucky to get a copy of that to listen to ahead of the release. It's fantastic. So he's on next week, and then the week after that, we are joined by Mr. Suit and Tie Guy himself, John Drake. So he'll be able to tell us about his new Radiophonic 1 semi-modular synth, and lots of other things as well, including what's going on with NobCon, the synth show over in the US, and whether that's going to go ahead or not this year, or if not, what are the plans for the future. After John Drake, so we've got Manny Fernandez. We don't have a picture for Manny Fernandez yet, so I can't do that, but we all know Manny. He generally hangs out in the chat room when he can, and he's been our guest when we've done the Essence FM stuff. So what Manny doesn't know about FM ain't worth knowing, and he's done a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So we'll get his kind of take maybe on the whole Yamaha thing, because he's been working with them for many years. We have a week off the week after that so far, and then coming up on June 18th, we've got this guy. We've got Roger Lyons, who is a cracking dude and keyboard tech with the great and the good, and an all-round fun guy. So Roger will be joining us on June the 18th. And we don't yet have a picture for this one, but June 25th, we've got Kent Spong, who has been in the chat room. I don't know if he's still there, but really looking forward to that one, because Kent has got some great stories. He was telling me earlier about the Daft Punk and the Moog Sonic 5 that he showed a picture of, which was very interesting. But we're going to learn some stuff from Kent. And then July 2nd, we've got JJ Yexarlik, ex of Art of Noise and producer extraordinaire and Fairlight master. And whilst we were on air, I received a message from Mr. Mark Doty, who says I should be free one Friday in July. So fingers crossed, we will nail Mark Doty down for a week in July. And I'm saying it here now because it's now public and he can't go back on it.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Doty, get your arse online one Friday, and we'll get you on the show. So, if there's anybody you'd like us to bring on as a guest, do let us know. Especially if you have a contact for them. And when I say contact, not just your Facebook friend that they have no idea who you are, but if you genuinely do have a contact. And you'd like to see them on the show and you think they would make a great guest, then do let us know at all of the places that I mentioned before. And we're looking to fill up the second half of the year now. It's gradually taking shape, but let's do some of that. In the meantime, we will be back same time, same place next week. So that's 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. and 11 a.m. in the US. And we'll be back next week with Michael Oakley. And as I'm filling for time here, I get the right screen up. There we go. Take the greatest of care. Get your shots. Stay safe. Keep your masks on. And we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.